Gentlemen, you've been there, you've done that in government, you spoke for various leaders, presidents, and so on and so forth. Let me just start us off by asking you, how do you see the relationship today between government and the media in America?
There's tension that is built into the relationship, and I think it's creative tension.
Is tension an understatement?
I'm not sure it's the right characterization. I have a slightly different view. I think 30 or 40 years ago there was a built-in tension. There was a mistrust. We went through the years of Watergate where what I'd call paternalistic journalism came to an end, and almost anything the government said the press was skeptical of. And I think that was fine, and there was a lot of tension then. What's happened over time with technology exploding is media has become much more about capturing niche audiences. And how do you do that? Is you tell them what they want to hear, not what's actually going on. So if you look at the landscape now, you have everybody in the media, except for maybe newspapers, making a lot more money. But it's changed the way they cover the news, and that's had an impact.
So when you're corporate and you're in for profit, you definitely want to have a good relationship with government, right? With the establishment.
Well, I think from government standpoint, the other change in the environment is in terms of politics in a city like Washington D.C. It's the idea of a nonstop political campaign, and so both sides are jockeying to see whose narrative will, to use a term that we used to use at the White House, break through. And that there is competition there, and it's an imperfect system. I would argue, even with its imperfections, ultimately it does work.
Jim Risen says that in two of his books and in his reporting that there's too much secrecy in this country, that since 9/11 the national security state has basically compromised the freedom of the press, and that this administration, the one that you worked for, PJ, is the worst in history in terms of prosecuting and going after leakers, whistleblowers, and in terms of suppression of the media.
Well, let's unpack that.
It's a serious charge.
Are there too many secrets? Yes. Can government be more transparent? Yes. Now there are reasons why there are quote unquote more secrets. At my desk at the State Department, I had a classified computer and an unclassified computer. If I started an email conversation with 10 colleagues over how to address a particular national security issue, every time that one of us replied, that was a new classified document. So that has added billions of emails, to this system.
So what are you trying to say there?
Can we be more transparent? Yes. By the same token, our experience with WikiLeaks and our experience with Edward Snowden, that would say that notwithstanding, the fact that there are a large number of secrets classified for good reason, nonetheless it has not prevented the media from doing effective reporting to help the American people understand what the government is doing.
For someone like me who comes from the outside, is sort of a student of American politics, but comes from the outside, looks at a situation with a bird's eye view. What do I see? What I see is journalists going to jails, whistleblowers going to jails, and the people who brought about huge financial disasters to this country, huge foreign disasters for this country, none of them are accountable. Only the journalists and the whistleblowers. Well, that's what I see.
Well, I'd suggest you look a little harder. I think you're basing your entire theory on what you call a whistleblower, but who a court of law made the decision was a criminal, because the law is clear. There are, in our Constitution, freedoms of the press, but it's not in our Constitution there's nowhere does it say that those freedoms don't have a cost. Mm-hmm. And I have ultimate respect for Jim Risen and the work he does, but no one, when they were writing the Constitution, said that journalists don't have to also follow the law. And
no, I'm saying something else. I'm saying just when the country is facing these huge challenges, on the foreign front and on the economy front.
But
And just when we need free press, you are going after the free press.
The United States just suffered its most significant classified leak in history. You know, what Edward Snowden did in terms of providing highly classified information about ongoing intelligence operations was as serious a breach as we've ever suffered. The journalists who have very effectively reported on those subjects won Pulitzer Prizes. Not one of them is in jail.
You know that I'm not going to be able to argue with these on you. I'm not a lawyer, and most of our viewers are not lawyers. That doesn't prevent us from trying to understand the bigger picture. How much freedom do the American people have to know what's going on inside their governments? Because if these people don't have these sources that stay confidential, how the heck are they going to know anything other than the stuff that you guys want to feed them whenever you want to feed them? Sure. That's the question.
Well, let me answer that. You know, the fact that you had a successful prosecution of Chelsea Manning did not preclude Edward Snowden, you know, from providing thousands of documents to a number of journalists.
But by the way,
I understand the argument that journalists make that prosecutions will force sources underground. Actually, there's no evidence to suggest that that is true.
No, but the evidence is that any threat of prosecution and the continued campaign against whistleblowers and against people like Jim Risen will of course continue to exert that kind of pressure and that kind of fear in the hearts of people who want to attempt the same. We're not going to be able to get to the bottom of things without confidential sources.
There is no campaign against journalists in the United States today. Sometime today, on Fox News, Fox News is going to call the President of the United States a dreadful executive, the worst in history. And tomorrow they will have the right and privilege of saying the same thing. In Egypt, that's not happening. In Turkey, that's not happening. In other countries, you criticize the leader, you go to jail. That's not
But you agree with me that we don't. But you agree with me that we hold America to different standards. But let's talk about it. Yeah. The big corporation that own the big media in this country, the biggest, like the GEs and the whatever cable and so on, they own the big media, the ABC, the CBS, the NBC, and so on and so forth. These big corporations have interest in good relationship with government, not interest in having bad relationship with government.
No, what they have more than anything right now is an interest in keeping viewership and selling advertising.
But what you said earlier, news in Washington is no longer relevant. What's important is the voyeurism.
So look at those big corporations.
Mm-hmm.
The Comcast Corporation, their flagship news operation now is left-leaning, liberal, progressive, MSNBC. That's because they know they can get an audience, they know who those people are, and they can sell advertisement based on that audience. So their news is skewed to reach those people. Yes. Fox, on the other hand, another big corporation with a multitude of interests, but their flagship is Fox News. And you could sit, if you landed on this planet from Mars and were put in a hotel room, I know, first day you watched MSNBC and the second day you watched Fox News, you'd think you were in an insane asylum. Right. You'd think that what has happened, it couldn't be further from the truth. Right. And what it's lost is any sense of what actually did happen today. What's the news? It's very hard to find it. And then you get, listen, the old system didn't work perfectly either. The old system was a bunch of people who were white males, rich, who went to Harvard, Yale, or Princeton. And they talked to
hung out with the Metropolitan Club with politicians.
Yes, and they went and they would talk about what the news was with a bunch of white males working in government who went to Harvard, Yale, or Princeton.
And the wives.
Right.
Whining and dining.
So it was a very, very segregated idea of what the public interest in the news. It wasn't egalitarian at all. But there was a sense that there was a public trust, that we were in this together. We were in this to make sure that this country stayed on the right path. And there'd be arguments, but now we're in a system where it is egalitarian. The craziest person in the world can say something.
Before you go on, I think I missed you right here. You said there was trust. Is that a good thing for journalists and politicians, for the leaders of the country and the leaders of the media to dine and wine together?
No, what I'm arguing is it's a good thing for people in government and people in the media to understand that there is a common good. There is an idea of what American democracy is about, and it's not about just selling the next paper, or it's not about just getting your guy reelected.
But shouldn't there be a division of labor where one exercises power and the other probes power?
Well, that's a good, both sides exercise power. The media exercises enormous power in this country. The government exercises enormous. So it's not a question of, it's not this simplistic idea of a bunch of media people who are just trying to dig around and get the truth. What they're you know, it may be a byproduct, but the primary focus now.
Joe, the New York Times cannot send you to jail. The New York Times cannot kill you. The New York Times cannot raid your house. The New York Times cannot do other things.
Yeah,
Government can.
Okay, the New York Times can make sure you don't get reelected.
Cannot start wars.
The New York Times can ruin your stock price. The New York Times has enormous power, and we shouldn't take away. I'd love to focus this away from the New York Times, because I think they're the exception. Mm-hmm. All of these bad things I just said about the media, I think the New York Times is the exception. And look at them. They're struggling.
You don't think they should be probing power? You don't think the essence of journalism is that these people are supposed to be probing power as the fourth estate? Not complicit with power?
No. I think you're looking at the wrong problem. I think they should be probing power. I think they should be trying to get at the truth. I think they should be telling the truth. I don't think they should be skewing their coverage to make sure people continue to watch them. I don't think they should be the same as a cheap 30-minute sitcom.
But you know, I don't disagree with you, but I'm trying to put the spectacle of the media aside. Do you think secrecy or the revelation of secrets is more damaging to the health of the American society, the American nation? Which is it?
I think that secrecy has, for as long as the country's been here, has been an essential element in protecting the country and an essential threat to our democracy. And that debate has raged for 250 years. We have to be able to keep secrets to protect our national security. We have to be able to go after information that where people are using the veil of secrecy to abuse power. We've been doing that forever.
Is it true that also working under secrecy, it tends to be counterproductive and inefficient just because secret is not open to accountability?
Well, governments rightly have secrets. So do corporations. If you're Google and you have a secret algorithm, if that becomes public, you lose your competitive advantage. Coca-Cola has a secret formula. You know, so governments should have secrets. At the same time, governments should have mechanisms to be accountable to the American people. We were manifestations of one of those mechanisms. Elections are another manifestation.
So while we're talking about the American people, some of us who live in that part of the world where an American president has more say about the life of an Arab than the life of an American, or the death of an Arab than the life of an American, why can't an Arab media outlet has access to the American president?
Well,
President Bush did 6 interviews with Arab media.
In fairness to the Obama administration, its Middle East policy was turned on its head, starting in 2011. A lot of what we thought we understood about the region, it continues to change. I think part of the reticence is just simply until the dust settles and you understand not only what's happening in a remarkable region of the world at a remarkable time, but what your policy is. Until you know your policy, it's hard to talk about it. And I think that's one of the reasons why the president has not done that outreach since.
Are you convinced, by the way?
Actually, I agree completely with PJ. The reason you sit and you do an interview is you've got something you're trying to sell. You're trying to push the parties. It is the ultimate in the political process.
Yes.
You're trying to move a party. You're trying to build public support. In many cases, you're trying to go around the elected or non-elected leader and get the people to pressure them. And with this Middle East policy right now, or where the Middle East is, it's just not ripe for that.
How do you want hearts and minds if you don't speak to the people, not at them, to them? I mean, that's my point. I'm trying to find an answer in Washington for this inquiry of ours. Why doesn't the President of the United States sit down with those who are at the receiving end of American power?
I have a suggestion. Walk out the front door, go down about 3 blocks that way, You can go in, you can raise your hand, and you can ask the
No
president's
jumping
spokesman.
fence, though.
You don't jump the fence, get cleared in.
Joe,
You can ask that question.
that's a great advice. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
Wonderful.